All right, thanks for joining me, everyone. Charles Moskowitz here. Welcome to the program. My guest is Gretchen Wollert. She is an author. Um, Gretchen, you're the author. Let me just call it up here. I'm kind of caught flat-footed here. The Magic and Mayhem of Donald Trump, a strategic excerpt of Born to Fight Lincoln and Trump, which also is authored by you. Gretchen, talk about for starters, I just would like to know how it is that you researched for this book and a little bit about your writing process.
Well, it began in 2016 when Donald Trump just burst on the political stage. Of course, it was a surprise to all of us, although he had been mulling things over in past interviews here and there,
Sure.
depending on how bad things got. And apparently, during the Obama administration, he believed things were bad enough. And correctly so, I believe.
Indeed.
But
Yeah.
in 2016, I noticed some similarities. I'm a historian. I thought I knew a lot about Abraham Lincoln, but in 2016, there were some things that popped up that I thought, oh, is Donald Trump anything like Abraham Lincoln? He was very tall. He won the election with less than half the popular vote. That's what Abraham Lincoln did in 1860. And he had a 10-year-old son in the White House, and he came with a first lady that was immediately ostracized for her fashion offenses and the media. And that happened to Mary Lincoln. And so I started digging deep into both Donald Trump and Abraham Lincoln's those things that you don't normally see, not only their past, how they were raised, their families, their upbringing, but their personalities. There are some huge differences, but I discovered hundreds over the course of 3 years digging deep into Donald Trump and Abraham Lincoln. 3 years of research, and I discovered hundreds of similarities. Put them down in a year's time in 10 chapters. And of course, that was my first book called Born to Fight Lincoln and Trump. Very well researched, well documented. These are real. These are not just anecdotal. These are real similarities. And then Born to Fight, Magic and Mayhem. It's at pre-order right now. It comes out soon. But Born to Fight came out in February of 2021. And that, of course, was right after the January 6th complete shutdown of any right-wing type of protest.
Right.
And we learn more and more about that and how I believe that was a complete setup. And it was not unlike, something that I have read about political entities using violence and kind of making it work their way, as in your Reichstag fire and
Right. I
Adolf
do
Hitler
compare it.
using that against the
Yeah.
people. But Magic and Mayhem came out. The book did well, and it has great reviews. It's an excellent, easy read. And if you want to find out more things than you ever want to know about Abraham Lincoln, that is not necessarily common knowledge, as well as Donald Trump, go for that book. But the Magic and Mayhem came out of that, and that's the most recent. Whoever thought that Donald Trump would survive years and years still in the political arena? And
Indeed.
he is
Incredible.
not necessarily campaigning right now for a second term, but I believe he's campaigning for a second first term. And that's something unique in our history. But my intention is to help people who see there are two extremes out there. Of course, our nation is divided. I believe it's every bit as divided as during the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln. 150 years later, we have issues that divide us, absolutely, and our nation is in turmoil. But on one hand, you learn that Donald Trump is the worst president in American history and should be incarcerated. We'll see if he is on September 18th.
Yes.
But for crimes against society. And then there's another extreme that says he's the savior of a nation and worthy of sainthood. Well, there's a reality in the middle, and this book is that reality in the middle. Donald Trump has virtues, and he also has mayhem that goes along with his magic. And you learn the real person. Just like Abraham Lincoln was a legitimate man, he was not one of those two extremes, and yet he is considered, the savior of the nation today. But we see that he was an ordinary person. Donald Trump is the same kind of ordinary person, but he has some things that are needed in a leader today, and absolutely worthy of any person's vote on November 5th, 2024. Such a critical election. But
Indeed.
This is the reality behind those different facades of Donald Trump, and encouragement that there is a magic middle along with the mayhem that kind of comes along with him. But
Right. There's
that
something
was my
very
intention.
different. No, I mean, and I'm glad you've done this. It couldn't be more timely, your research, as we have 3 months to go before what I think is probably the most consequential election maybe since Lincoln. Thank you for mentioning my book. Just as a quick footnote, that book is available at Amazon, The American Reichstag Fire, where I do draw comparisons between the Reichstag fire in Nazi Germany and the January 6th protests, in that I make the case that both of them have elements of a false flag, but more importantly, both of them were used as a pretext to move toward authoritarian power. In the case of the Nazis, they were able to suspend the Constitution and implement a dictatorship openly. In the case of the United States, it was not successful because we have enough Americans who understand freedom and patriotism that even though they were able to take President Trump off of the internet, which is the main means of communication now, they erased his Twitter account, which had over 30 million followers, and they probably removed thousands of other people, including my YouTube channel. Nevertheless, they were not successful because you have competition, Rumble and Gab and BitChute and all the rest coming up, and eventually you have Elon Musk step up and buy Twitter and reestablish levels of freedom on that network. So they were not successful at completely banishing the opposition. They put many people in prison who were still there for basically peacefully protesting. In some cases, people were violent, but it wasn't something that it involved this, quote, insurrection, which is a word that was made up by the media the next day. It was more, vandalism and whatnot, something that happens occasionally, unfortunately, but it doesn't warrant this kind of reaction. Now, as far as President Trump goes, the main criticism against him now, and I think probably this same criticism was lodged against Lincoln, is that he doesn't speak the proper, language of authoritarianism, what French scholar Elaine Benescon called the language of authoritarianism, where everything is couched in this double talk with a fancy British phony accent, where everybody speaks these long, sonorous, meaningless slogans and double meanings. He speaks plainly and sometimes quite vulgarly and bluntly. I know that might turn some people off. Personally, I love that. But either way, he tells the truth. They say, well, he lies. They're more afraid of the fact that he tells the truth. He may exaggerate from time to time about things like crowd size. It's kind of like your old uncle at a Thanksgiving bragging about the size of the fish he caught at the river. But on the big things, on the things that actually matter, he's a truth teller. And that's what they hate and fear.
Donald Trump, I believe, is one of the most honest presidents we've ever had in America. And you talk about he uses truthful hyperbole, but he admits it himself. The way he deals in honesty is very similar to how Abraham Lincoln deals in honesty. what he thinks, what he says, and what he does is all one person, and that's very refreshing
It
in
is. Good
Obama's
observation.
politically correct administration that he had, in which we all kind of thought that freedom of speech was taking a downward spiral because of things that we thought we weren't able to say. And boom, here comes Donald Trump and says, "Wait a minute, I'm going to say Merry Christmas. I'm gonna not apologize when I tell you to your face that you are wrong." There's
And
not
I'm
very
not afraid
much.
to take on my opponents with both fists. I mean,
Absolutely, and
I think it was
that's
his
the
daughter.
fight that is in him. But in dealing with the honesty,
Yeah,
he just tells it like it is. Very simple language. The way he communicates, how clear is the term fake news, and labeling his opponents with those nicknames that really define them, and it's
mm,
simple, it's clear. One thing about Donald Trump, so similar to the way Abraham Lincoln spoke to ordinary people, was he used the means of the day, of course, Twitter and media. They just can't help but cover him. But you're right, a lot of uh, censorship for a while there, and it still
right.
continues. But
Oh, I
Abraham
know.
Lincoln also had a very clear. He always tried to simplify the message so the most basic ordinary American could understand what he was saying, and that's
Indeed.
definitely similarity. Donald Trump is not so much an expert public speaker, but he is absolutely an expert at speaking to the public. And they do hate that. They hate that he actually says what he thinks. There's a lot of magic there, but some of the mayhem Donald Trump actually does himself. His truthful hyperbole, yes, is called out as lies. But that's kind of a New York thing. It's
Yeah.
promotion. It's helping people see a vision that it's the most beautiful, it's the most perfect, it's the biggest, it's the best.
Mm.
And he does do that. But ordinary people actually get it. We understand that it's like he calls it, truthful hyperbole.
Yeah.
Um,
He
but he
has like a
also tells
Queen's
us what we need
personality.
to know and what we want to know. We don't have to worry about what's in Donald Trump's mind. And that's an
Exactly.
unusual political situation.
Yeah, I mean, he has a Queens, New York kind of personality. He's very pugilistic, and I think his daughter Ivanka pointed out that he's an equal opportunity attacker. When people attack him, he doesn't care if they're male or female, gay or straight, black or white. He's going to go after them, and in a way, he's much more of a feminist than women who want women to be kept on this delicate pedestal where they can say whatever they want, but you can't hit back because to do so, no, Trump will hit back anyone. He doesn't care. If you attack him, he fights. He goes in the arena. And, in a sense, I think that drives them nuts. But look, I mean, I just interviewed an author who had spent many years working with Richard Nixon. Nixon liked ribald language and, obscenities. So did Lyndon Johnson. So did Kennedy. But they kept it more private. Trump puts it out there, which is the way he is. You better get used to it because you have to look at the fact that his administration was the most effective probably since FDR in terms of getting things done. Whether we agreed with FDR or not, he was very effective. Trump, on just about any scale, foreign policy, national security, the border, the economy, his record is incredible. And this was all while he was being viciously attacked by
The
this
judicial system, yes.
the appointments of judges who actually take the time to read the Constitution, right? They're going to say, oh, well, what about abortion? That seems to be the only issue they're running on. First of all, it's no longer a federal issue because Roe versus Wade has turned it back to the states. So if they want to issue that issue, let them take it up with the states. And the states, that's what democracy is all about. They say, this is the face of democracy. Well, you elect people to your state legislatures to make laws regulating abortion. I mean, here in Massachusetts, for God's sakes, they now do fourth trimester abortions. That's unfortunately what the people in our state seem to want. I mean, it's to me, it's barbarous and heinous. But the point I'm making here is that these are questions up to the people of those states. It's not a national issue.
I believe that abortion is the slavery issue of today. There are
Right.
so many similarities between what Donald Trump actually is doing right now. Of course, he's getting castigated from the extreme pro-life side for moderating in uh, the Republican platform for this election. But that is exactly what Abraham Lincoln had to do. First of all, Donald Trump wants to win. And there is a public opinion climate right now. And it came out of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And I knew this was going to happen. It's all kinds of ammunition for the political opposition, for the Democrats, to come back and get him for. And he is doing what Abraham Lincoln did with the slavery issue. Lincoln was very anti-slavery. He was never an abolitionist, but he had to come back and clarify as the Democrats were saying, wait, you're for the mixing of the races and all of this. And Abraham Lincoln actually had to say, no, I am not for that kind of equality of the Black man. And Frederick Douglass, the most famous Black man in American history, he was an abolitionist,
Indeed.
completely blasted Abraham Lincoln for, how dare you say that the Black man is not, you're not for equality. Abraham Lincoln had to moderate his stance in order to get elected. The top thing was, let's get elected. And then
Exactly.
he had to maintain moderate stance in not
Well, he
abolishing
wanted to
slavery
be
immediately in
he
order to
wanted to
win
be
the war. So
and he
let's
wanted
win
to
the
be
war. And that's
president of
what
all the
Donald Trump
people.
wants to do.
Yeah, he wanted to be president of all the people. He was obviously against slavery. However, Lincoln's main focus was to save the Union from the biggest crisis it ever faced. And I think in the case of Trump, he wants to put America first, make America great again. This is by the way, that was the same slogan that Kennedy used. People don't realize that. Um, Except Trump really means it. Trump sat down. He was one of the few presidents, probably since Coolidge, I would guess, who actually paid attention to the Republican National Committee platform. The rest of them, both Republican and Democrat, they just look at that as a lot of fluff, stuff you say during a convention. Trump actually had it on his desk and he read it and he went through it and he tried to carry it out. This is an incredible, there are things about Trump and his presidency that really are incredible. Now, I want to ask you, Gretchen, I mean, one of the common complaints about Trump is, how can Christians support Trump? After all, he's a divorced man. He's had affairs with prostitutes. Who knows? I'm not saying he did, but I'm just saying, he doesn't exactly strike people as a paragon of virtue. I don't think he claims to be. I mean, my answer to that is he protects religious freedom. And I also think Trump has learned from his past. He's changed. He seems to have become closer to God. I mean, he's unlike Clinton. I mean, he's like, he's become more godly. What say you?
Well, in the Magic and Mayhem of Donald Trump, the chapter on a man of faith,
Hmm.
the in his first election, the evangelical vote was critical. He nailed that. He is still pro-life. And one thing that the Christians need to understand is, first of all, go back and read your Bible and understand that the heroes of the Bible, the people that God had to use, they were all flawed. Abraham, the forefather of not only our faith but the Jewish faith, um, actually let people take off with his other men take off with his wife 2 different times.
Right,
And King David actually covered up his adultery with a murder. So, this is all in perspective. God only has
right,
one kind of human being to use, and it's a flawed human being. But also in understanding that Donald Trump is following on the abortion issue exactly the same type of path that Abraham Lincoln followed. He had to moderate, he had to actually win. And to do that, he was politically savvy enough to be silent um, on some things and actually, step back from the anti-slavery, passion that he actually had, um, in order to win the election. And then, it took several years before he saw that the American public was ready for that emancipation of the Black man. And Donald Trump is following in that same political maneuvering, and they need to understand that, and they need to see it. It's still there. And but he has to win the election, and then he's got to win the war, which is, it's kind of a sneaky, subversive civil war that we are in right now, and fighting political opponents that are truly hitting below the belt. But he is ready
Oh,
for
that's
that. But
interesting.
he is following the path of Abraham Lincoln with uh, in going in and winning the election. After this, after he wins, yes, he will, I have no doubt, move twice as fast and accomplish twice as many things as
Oh yeah, I mean he's learned
he
some
did in
lessons
his
from the
first
first
term.
time. Oh yeah, and but yet the war against Trump is unprecedented, both in terms of the propaganda campaign by the liberal establishment media, which is so hateful and so over the top, and so openly filled with lies that they don't even pretend otherwise. And I've never seen anything like it. Journalism has completely gone out the window. They never reported on the election of 2020. I'm not even going to talk about it now because I'm running this live on YouTube. You're not allowed to. We'll suffice to say, hopefully, we'll get into that after Trump wins. Then then we might have a reckoning, maybe not. But the point is that the propaganda is ratcheted up now just as much as ever. It's gone on for 8 years. And the attack against him personally is unprecedented. Putting aside the fact that he took a bullet to the head, I mean, you have attempts to bankrupt him, attempts to imprison him. He may end up going to prison now. Attempts to charge him with every kind of crime. I mean, you took a misdemeanor allegedly and turned it into 38 felonies, and it's so corrupt and so rotten that I pray for Trump every day. I can't believe that he's able to put up with this kind of pressure. Do you think that's taken, and do you think that they ultimately are going to be successful here? I mean, have they taken enough of a toll? You and I are talking because we're much more in the know, but your average American who is paying 42% of their income in taxes, they still get a lot of their news from Lester Holt, David Muir. They don't listen to, they don't have the time or the energy to look into it any further. And I just wonder if they're going to ultimately succeed here.
One thing, I having written the first book, Born to Fight, Lincoln and Trump, I understand the connection with history, and too many people don't understand history. Of course, that's something of the radical left. Eliminate history so that you can give it a revision and not let people truly know what it's all about. But this election is all about the truth. If the truth can get out, and that's what they're stopping, that's what they're trying to eliminate. But the Democrats, the methods are a little bit different, but Abraham Lincoln dealt with the same type of opposition. Of course, when he was elected in 1860, the Southern Democrats said, we are not having this. And they said, we're going to have our own nation. And it was sectional at the time, it was regional slavery. So they seceded and they declared all out war. And that
Mhm.
is tough. What we have now is Donald Trump was elected. The Democrats went berserk and they are out to get him. And all of these things that they have tried on him have worked on other people. The Republican Party has not had a fighter since Abraham Lincoln as tough as Donald Trump. And,
Mhm.
he spent a lifetime developing that fight. And he's not a quitter. He will never quit. So if someone is wondering about Donald Trump, what makes him do what he does, how can I be confident that he is on the right track? He loves America. He wants to give it back to the people. He's for freedom. He's for
Yeah.
respect for our flag. He's for strength. He is for all of those things. Get the magic and mayhem of Donald Trump and dig deep and be confident
Yes.
that what he is doing now is political savvy maneuvering, just like Abraham Lincoln did, in order to win and then be able to move forward. And the
Indeed.
possibilities are endless. And when that assassination attempt, Donald Trump absolutely believes that it was God who saved him from that bullet. He said so. We believe it. Abraham Lincoln actually believed and truly that divine providence and God was in charge of how the
Indeed.
Civil War went. And so we'll see the possibilities after Donald Trump wins the election,
Yes.
with the
God willing.
confidence that he will do what he says he will do. But yeah,
Yeah. No, I mean,
after
it's
that, of course, they did get Abraham Lincoln.
right.
So it's anybody's
No,
guess
it's very
how long
scary.
Donald
And
Trump is able to work in the government with
yeah,
this
that's right. With
incredibly vicious opposition.
this kind of threat is very real, and they may try it again. God forbid. If you want to understand Trump really, I would urge people to read his inaugural address in 2017. Which has been denigrated, and you can't even get it hardly online. And when you do, it's it's interspersed with negative commentary. That address should be read by every school child. It's easy to understand. It's direct, and he says, just as you just said, Gretchen, he wants to return power to its rightful owner, the sovereign citizen under God. He doesn't care about party. He's kind of a nonpartisan. He is the representing the people versus this rotten establishment, which has been built up over probably the last century, and which isn't given up so easy. I mean, this is why it's scary. This could be their last gasp, or this could be their triumph. I think that there's a lot at stake here, and we really. I'm holding my breath. I believe that Trump is way ahead. I think that all these polls showing Harris winning, that's a lot of gaslighting. It's that you notice that they've stopped polling after August 3rd. They just don't do it now. But Rasmussen, which is an honest pollster, is doing it, and they're showing that Trump's ahead. So they're trying to play a game where people get discouraged. It is discouraging when you look at something like the Drudge Report. Oh, it's horrible. Well, the New
You
York
know,
Times.
fighting a war is all about morale.
Yeah,
And the left has no choice but to completely hide who Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are, because if they can keep the truth about their radical left agenda and who they are truly as, socialist, Marxist entities, if they can hide that, then they're hoping to move from a honeymoon period all the way to the election.
and keep
I
her
have
under wraps.
doubts that Kamala will even show up at a debate. We'll
No,
see.
they're keeping her under wraps in the same way that they kept Biden under wraps in the basement, except with him, they had the excuse of COVID, which was a bad excuse. But in her case, I mean, she's not talking to anyone. She won't do an interview. I mean, Trump spoke with Elon Musk for 2.5 hours, and I urge people to listen to it. It's fascinating. It's an extraordinary. It's how politics should be done. He's invited her. She can go there, but she won't because she can't. She can't.
Trump
Can you
is
imagine?
fearless. He
Yeah, but can you
absolutely is
imagine Kamala
fearless.
Harris talking about inflation or Israel or Ukraine or the border? No, she can't because she doesn't have the intellectual ability. And the only line of defense that they have for that is, well, you're attacking her because she's a woman. No, I mean, Elizabeth Warren could do it. I don't like Elizabeth Warren. I don't think she's an honest person, and I don't like her politics, but she's not stupid. No one would say that. She's brilliant, evilly brilliant, but brilliant. So it's not that. It's, she's not, she actually is not that bright. She doesn't come across as anyone who's done any kind of deep understanding. I mean, can you compare her? You can imagine her with Putin. I mean, come on. She's not in a position. I mean, it's in a way it's even worse than Biden. And I think people see that. I hope and pray that they see it.
Yes, if the truth comes out, if the truth is allowed to come out, if the Republican Party, if the candidates, if the surrogates, if all of them push what is already out there as the truth, uh, the people will not vote for the radical left agenda that is Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Oh,
They
indeed.
just won't do it. The key is, will the truth get out? And I put nothing above the Democrat machine in trying to finagle and ease this absurd candidate into the presidency. So we'll find out what happens, but I do believe that divine providence is in the mix, always has. I think the Democrats absolutely underestimate that, but also Republicans tend to underestimate the levels that
How far
Democrats
they'll
will
go.
go to get
Oh yeah, I
elected.
mean, and I think that one of the biggest concerns, obviously, and again, we can't go into this, but it's that some of the same apparatus that was in place in terms of voting what during the 2020 election is still there, and that's very, very worrisome. And I think that I don't know if they can pull it off this time because more people are aware of it, and now you have a Republican National Committee that's fielding 175,000 volunteers. Check them
Mhm.
out if you can. If you're a housewife, if you're elderly, if you're a teenager, you're a college guy or woman, and you have a little extra time, you can volunteer and man the polling places, man the counting rooms where they get in the absentee ballots, which they're going to probably mail out like a junk mail. You can check these things. There are ways to do this.
And there
Glenn
are
Youngkin
also
did it
apps
in Virginia.
available for live streaming during the election, and so
Oh,
that is meant to
and
keep
it's
it
gonna be
fair.
ugly. It's really gonna be scary. I mean, Glenn Youngkin did it in Virginia. He had a staff of lawyers on call in case anyone saw anything fishy going on that would immediately respond. He had thousands of volunteers, and it was probably the most honest election in Virginia since Jefferson. I mean, it can be done on a state level, one state at a time, and to bring about awareness. But it's very critical that people get out and actually get involved in the electoral system and to volunteer for that.
And
This is
vote early. Republicans
exactly
need to trump it out there. Vote
vote.
early.
Will,
Do
as they
not
say
need
in
to wait
Boston,
till election day.
as the Irish in Boston like to say, vote early and vote often. No, I'm kidding. But yes, look, I mean, we're up against a huge machine, and
Mhm.
it's a machine that's capable of doing just about anything, and that's their main calling card. I think it's too late in the day for them to create another pandemic with only 3 months to go. No one's going to buy it. I think they're trying to instigate a world war, maybe in Israel, maybe Ukraine. I don't think people are buying that either. I don't think that the Iranians are buying it. No one's like playing ball with them because I do think that they believe Trump is coming back, in which case there's going to be a strong America that's going to negotiate peace. That's not interested in Trump. We should remember, did not have any wars during his presidency. The Ukraine was not invaded. They say, oh, well, he's in Putin's pocket. Well, then why didn't he invade Ukraine? I mean, Trump had world and one dealt with the honest broker and in a friendly way, but in a strong way. That's what we need on the world stage right now. The world is too unstable not to have a strong America that defends itself and that stands up for, with allies and stands up for freedom. This is,
Yes, definitely.
I ask
And
people
Donald
to
Trump,
put aside, yeah.
yeah, Donald Trump is the one who is able to fight against this incredible Democrat machine. And my concern is, like I already said, if the truth gets out, and that is what is tough right now. The truth has to get out. And I am concerned about what the Democrats may try to do to get
Mhm.
Kamala Harris another honeymoon period and
Who knows? I mean, I think they're going to
They
try
they
to pull
they are
off
not
this thing in
limited. They
Chicago.
do not limit themselves. Their guiding principle is the end always justifies the means, and it is
Exactly.
get elected no matter what.
I would just urge people, if you feel like, oh well, I mean, the only thing they have is that Trump makes out these mean tweets. Oh, how horrible! You don't like his mean tweets? Fine. I personally think they're hilarious, but if you don't like them, fine. You're talking about the future of the free world here. We're talking about an economy where it costs $15 to get a McDonald's hamburger for your family. If you have a family of five, it costs $75 to go to McDonald's. Is that fair? You have to have. We're talking about 20 million people surging across the border. It's a disaster. So put those things aside and just take a look at the future of the country and put that first. Really, I mean, let's use some basic common sense here.
Yes,
Anyway,
make America think again. That's what Donald Trump is trying to do. Make
yes,
America think again.
indeed. So, Gretchen, let my listeners and viewers know where they can get your excellent book and when it's coming out.
Go to Amazon right now, The Magic and Mayhem of Donald Trump. It is at pre-sale. It is coming out soon. Audiobook will shortly follow, probably into early September, but also my website, Gretchen Wollert, WOLLERT.com. Go there. You can get both books, but definitely do not think that this election is something you can take along with business as usual. It is not usual, and our nation, what we become after this election, one thing or the other. And we want the America that is strong and free.
Indeed. Well, listen, thank God you're doing what you're doing, and may God bless and save and keep Trump safe, and may God bless America. And Gretchen, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. Let's stay in touch. Let's talk again, certainly as the election approaches.